So it's a jobs, housing, it's a real commute thing here. So game-changing number 2 is that nationwide workplaces are evolving into these interactive districts. So again, I think that what we're seeing, what the employers are really looking for, are a different kind of place than we saw in the past. So the Bishop ranches and the Hacienda business parks, which are really the suburban business parks, are really now looking at how they can reinvent themselves. And here are pictures of, this is now South Lake Union in Seattle, what I was talking about before. So here's what it looked like before, low density kind of warehouse and all that kind of stuff. And now there are these big buildings. This is part of the Amazon campus, but you can see they're big, or you can sort of see. I had to take these pictures with my iPhone from the streetcars, so they're not as great as they could be if you had an urban designer with a big lens. Oh, sorry. But anyway, bike parking and all this kind of stuff. And you can see there's a tremendous amount of construction going on here because this is where the Amazon employees want to be. And so this is where Amazon is building its stuff. So again, there was a streetcar line built here, and in response to that, now there's a huge amount of employment that's clustering here because this is where the workforce wants to be. This is the same thing that happened in north of Massachusetts in Washington, D.C. This was an old, funky area that was inaccessible, and the property owners got together and built a station. They didn't even have to bring the rail line in. They built a station on the metro line, and once people could get there on transit, bam. This is where employers wanted to be because all their workers could get there on transit. So, our idea that we used to want to make it so everybody could drive to work, not anymore. And this is not because government is telling these businesses to do it. It's because this is what they have to do to attract their workforce. So it's a different thing. Game changer. Again, we talked about these demographics and the kinds of greater demand for transit-oriented locations. But I think that one of the things that's really interesting about this is millennials. These are the kids who were born between 1985 and 2000. And these millennials, these young people, are just not driving as much as they used to. So this chart shows the percentage that had their the percentage of kids, let's see, from 16 to 19 with a driver's license. So in 1978, 50% of 16-year-olds had their driver's license, and in 2008, only 30%. And for 19-year-olds, it used to be almost 100%, and now it's only 77%. So a lot of kids they're not interested in driving. They want to ride their bikes, they want to take transit, they want to sit home and play video games and talk to their friends on Facebook, whatever. But they're not in cars the way they used to be. And the other thing is that when we look at vehicle miles traveled, even the baby boomers, so the blue are per capita, that's per person, VMT is vehicle miles traveled. So you can see that the vehicle miles traveled per person is declining. Let's see, in the red is 2008, and it's lower than 2001 for every group. But where the biggest drop-offs are for the millennials, and then also for the baby boomers. So people are just driving, even if they have a driver's license, they're just not going as far as they used to. So again, what this means is people's behaviors are changing. So we're not telling anybody what they have to do. We just see that these trends are occurring. So, and of course, gas prices are increasing. So here's sort of an interesting fact bit that for every increase in gas prices, this directly correlates to increases in transit ridership. And that shouldn't be that surprising, but the bigger the dot, the greater the correspondence between these two. So we've already got a pretty robust transit system, but you can see, again, that the Bay Area has an increase. Look at Seattle, Portland, some of these other cities, as gas prices go up, people don't want to drive. So just to wrap up, I know I'm going on too long here. The SCS can work, but there are real challenges. So I believe that this is it can be a market-driven kind of a plan, but there are some significant problems. One is that there are a lot of employment concentrations that fall outside of these priority development areas. And so we need to identify regional investments that can really help business location decisions. And I think that some of this is beginning to think about taking the transit to the jobs. So Redwood Shores, I think probably some of the areas out in Marin, south of the Civic Center, again where Autodesk is, that kind of thing. Maybe we should be thinking more creatively about transit to those places. Sometimes it's little connector shuttles. Regional investment should work to support accessibility for low skill workers. So again, this is a workforce issue that we are not just assigning this system for highly educated people in the workforce, but we now need to think about everybody. And finally, we need to realize that every community isn't going to be full of biotech and all that kind of stuff, but some communities are going to have different characteristics to them, and we have to plan for that. But finally, I want to say if the SCS works, we can all give ourselves some choices for getting to work and getting to around, and that's really what we're looking for is choices. And I want this commute. Who knows? But I like this woman. A couple of last year, we were doing some work in Phoenix, and we were out to dinner with the planning director of Phoenix, and she showed up at our hotel with her bike, but she had on these really cool high heel shoes, and she said, "Hey, if the girls in Copenhagen can do it, so can I." So here you go. So, and when I walk to work now, but when I used to commute, I valued that time on the bus for reading. So, but you know, some people are going to continue to want to drive, and that's fine too. We just all want a choice. So with that, now we'll open it up for questions. Yes,
my
sir.
question before, if you go back to the slide that had the population growth by age group and by decade, I just had a question because it was recently announced one more time that in Mill Valley we have record kindergarten registration.
Right.
Which is saying just
Right.
the opposite of
Right.
that. Because
Right.
for the last, they're up to 420 new kindergartners this year,
Right.
I believe.
Right.
And it used to be around 360, and for the
Right.
last 4 or 5 years, it's been
Right.
going every single
Right.
year.
Right.
So it's interesting that we're
these-
going the opposite direction.
These are
from that
national
one.
trends.
Hmm?
These are Bay Area
I know
trends
it
for the
is.
entire region, and
Yeah.
so in my looking at the demographic, we were talking about this at dinner. My looking at the demographics for Mill Valley, it looks like you have two things going on. One is that there are a lot of households where there are people aging in place who are getting older. Like my household size has dropped 50% since 2000 because my two kids have moved out, but my husband and I are still there. And at the same time, there are younger families who are starting to move in. Now, in communities that are highly desirable, and they have this problem on the peninsula too, where the schools are really overcrowded. So in some communities that are highly desirable, that have good public school systems, you may not experience this. But in other communities in the Bay Area, we've been doing a little bit of work with the city of Martinez, where, yeah, their schools, and they are having this problem where they are aging in place. There's been very little turnover in the housing in the last 10 years. There's been almost no growth. And now there's a cohort of seniors who would like to sell their houses, and they can't find buyers for them. So some of the impacts of these trends will be experienced differentially in different places. So that's always the challenge when you look at the big picture and then you look at a specific place. It may or may not hold true, but that doesn't mean that this broader trend isn't happening. San Mateo County is another place where both things are happening simultaneously. And in some places, communities closed schools because they had such a drop-off after the baby boomers moved through. And now there's a kind of a boom, and the facilities just they were there, but they're not there today because they've been sold or they've been repurposed for something else. So it's challenging. And I think, again, in some communities you're going to have some of both. So